I now give the floor to the representative of the Philippines.
Mr. President, I am honored to deliver this statement on behalf of the Philippines and to manifest for the record that it aligns with a statement delivered by the distinguished representative of Antigua and Barbuda on behalf of the Group of 77 and China. The Philippines also wishes to commend the Secretary General for the preparation of the comprehensive report on this agenda item 47, entitled Role of the Economic and Social Council in the Implementation and Follow-up to the Outcomes of the Major United Nations Conferences and Summits in light of relevant General Assembly resolutions, including Resolution 6116. Mr. President, as an immediate past Vice President of the ECOSOC, the Philippines has been in the privileged position of actively participating in the revitalization of this important organ of the United Nations. In the same manner, it continues to contribute to the work of the various functional commissions of which it is a member. On substantive matters, the ECOSOC annual ministerial reviews focused this year on sustainable development coincided with the Philippines' positions on cross-cutting issues such as the food crisis, climate change, and the gender gap that were reported during the Commission on Sustainable Development's meeting last May, all aspects of which add to the challenges faced by developing countries in meeting the Millennium Development Goals. The Philippines has taken the position that greater focus should be given to adaptation than mitigation. Adapting to climate change requires reducing underlying vulnerabilities, building response capacities, and managing climate risks. 2 weeks ago, parliamentarians from countries vulnerable to climate change who gathered together in a consultative meeting in Manila, Philippines, came up with the Manila Call for Action of Parliamentarians on Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Change Adaptation. And this representation was privileged to be a co-convener with the UNISDR. The Philippines, together with these countries, will also look into the compliance of our respective governments with the Yogo Framework for Action 2005-2015, the Guide for Effective Disaster Reduction at National Levels, which 168 countries adopted in 2005. It is now high time to review the legislative progress in adhering to the Yogo Framework for Action, the UNFCCC, and the Bali Plan of Action. Accordingly, the Philippines resounds the parliamentarians' entreaty to the United Nations and the Interparliamentary Union to commence the progress of transforming the Yogo Framework for Action to an internationally binding legal instrument. The Philippines is convinced that this would strengthen our commitments to and ensure the realization of the goals and objectives of the Yogo Framework for Action. Mr. President, the ECOSOC special meeting on the global food crisis was one of the very first discussions on this problem, and one that led to the high-level meeting in Rome and the eventual finalization of the comprehensive framework for action. As one of the world's largest importers of rice, whereas 30 years ago we were one of the biggest exporters of rice, the Philippines remains critically engaged in this process on the food crisis. During the meeting on the Commission on the Status of Women, the Philippines highlighted the fact that the World Economic Forum ranked the Philippines as the only Asian country in the top 10 of the Global Gender Gap Index, an achievement that reflects progress in narrowing the gender gap. However, that is not reflective of the vulnerability faced by women in the face of the current global financial crisis. On procedural matters, it has become apparent that all of the major global crises that have made the headlines over the past year, the food and fuel crisis, climate change and environmental degradation, and most recently, the financial crisis, are within the purview of the ECOSOC. These crises pose a grave threat to the achievement of all internationally agreed development goals, and in particular, the Millennium Development Goals. The number and severity of these global crises challenge the UN system, challenge all UN member states as well, in terms of trying to find quick, coherent, comprehensive, and coordinated responses to the multidimensional and oftentimes interrelated effects of these problems. Mr. President, the Philippines supports taking a closer look at the utility of triennializing the report on integrated follow-up to reduce the amount of work that may not have had any useful outcomes. Finally, on a personal note and speaking as a member of the Philippine Senate, the upper house of the Congress of the Philippines, let me underscore the recommendation on the conduct of the ECOSOC's Development Cooperation Forum, or DCF, and I quote, that the inclusion of civil society organizations, parliamentarians, as well as local government and private sector representatives, provides for a unique opportunity to garner a wide range of inputs for a deepened dialogue on the future of international development cooperation. There is much merit on this recommendation. I believe that the development pillar of the United Nations must be pushed forward on the basis of a multi-stakeholder approach, as it is only in this manner that we can actually ensure that policy recommendations, negotiated resolutions, and program implementation can have any real meaning to the ordinary person. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Philippines. I now give the floor to the permanent representative of Belarus.